March 1953. A 23-year-old Texan sits at a typewriter and begs a promoter he has never met for a job. He has had 12 matches. He has a wife, a baby on the way, and almost no money. He is one bad month from quitting wrestling forever. 30 years later, his family name would fill Texas Stadium. In this video, the full story of Fritz Von Erich, the discus thrower who became a fake German, the father who built an empire on his sons, and the man that wrestling has never quite decided how to judge. Because to understand the tragedy, you have to start with the ambition. And the ambition started in a town of 500 people. Jack Barton Adkisson was born on August 16, 1929 in Jewett, Texas. A railroad stop, roughly halfway between Dallas and Houston, small enough to walk in an afternoon. His father sold food for a living. His mother was named Corinne. Jack was an only child, which matters more than it sounds, because everything he would later build was an attempt to fill a house with people. The family ended up in Dallas, and that is where the athlete showed up. At Crozier Tech High School, Adkisson was a 6'3", 210-pound tackle on the football team. He was also, and this detail is too good to leave out, the tallest clarinet player in the school band. In the spring, he threw the shot put and the discus. And he placed at the city and regional level in both. He was not a curiosity. He was legitimately good. He stayed home to attend Southern Methodist University, and it was the throwing circle where he separated himself. In March of 1949, he won the Collegiate Division discus at the Southwestern Recreation Meet. That fall, an ankle injury slowed him down. He played as a reserve lineman for coach Matty Bell and earned the only football letter of his life. The highlight came late in the season, at the Cotton Bowl, in front of more than 75,000 people, when SMU lost a thriller to undefeated Notre Dame. Adkisson was on the field blocking for the All-American running back Doak Walker. Remember that detail? It becomes important later because it is the one piece of his real biography that Jack Adkisson would spend years quietly inflating. The truth is, he was always a better thrower than a football player. In May of 1950, he came within a foot of breaking a 10-year-old Southwest Conference discus record and finished second in the conference meet. And then it was over, just like that. 2 weeks later, at 20 years old, he married Doris Juanita Smith. She was 17, a Louisiana native, and they had known each other for less than 2 months. That marriage would last 42 years and bury 5 children. The newlyweds left Dallas for Corpus Christi, where Jack's parents had relocated. He enrolled at the University of Corpus Christi, and the coach there, Will Walls, could barely field a team and was thrilled to land a transfer from SMU. The thrill did not last. The ankle flared up during fall drills. In October, he was called away because his grandmother was seriously ill, and he dropped out. Records are patchy, but it looks like he played parts of 2 games, total. So there he was, 21 years old, no degree, no football, a wife, and bills. In late March of 1951, he took a job with the Corpus Christi Fire Department, earning $235 a month, filling a hole left by first responders who had shipped out to Korea. Later that year, off-duty, he helped break up a gang attack on a local woman and got his name in the paper for it. That is who he was at 22. A fireman, a guy who ran toward trouble. Nobody looking at him would have guessed he would become the most hated German in America. In June of 1952, he took one more swing at football. He signed with the Dallas Texans, a franchise cobbled together from the corpse of the NFL's New York Yanks, who had gone 1-9-2 the year before and folded. Adkisson, now around 240 pounds, probably got in the door through Walls, who was on the staff. He lasted about 2 months. On August 7th, with Doris 6 weeks from giving birth, he quit and told anyone who asked that he had no chance of making the roster, which, given what the Texans were, is a remarkable admission. That team could not pay its players. It got shipped off to Pennsylvania and Ohio to finish a 1-11 season. Gino Marchetti, an original Texan who went on to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, later said practices consisted of playing volleyball or sitting under a tree telling stories. Jack Adkisson could not make the worst team in football history. Less than 3 weeks later, he was a professional wrestler. And this is where the story almost ends before it begins. Ed McLemore needed bodies. Mr. Mac promoted wrestling in Dallas, and in late 1952 he split from his backers and from the National Wrestling Alliance, the cartel that controlled territorial wrestling in America, over fights about television money and title changes. His rivals kept the name talent. McLemore had the TV contracts and no roster. Enter Jack Adkisson. He debuted in August of 1952, and the family moved to Dallas, where Jack Jr. was born that September, and the young father started working preliminaries at the Sportatorium. On paper, he was perfect, a local high school hero, an SMU man, a guy whose resume could be gently exaggerated into Doak Walker's lead blocker. On the side, he helped McLemore with the bookkeeping, which is how he first learned the business side of wrestling. That detail would matter more than any match he ever had. But it was not a living. By March of 1953, he had a dozen matches to his name. So he went looking for a way up, and he found the strangest ladder in the sport. Jack Pfeffer was a Russian Jewish immigrant, an outlaw promoter who woke up every morning intending to annoy the wrestling establishment in whatever way was available. Eccentric, vindictive, and connected. On March 17, 1953, Adkisson mailed him a special delivery letter with 9 3-cent stamps on the envelope. In it, he name-dropped the Texas promoters, praised Pfeffer to the sky, and stretched his own record, claiming he had played a year of pro football for the New York Yanks. He had not. He had spent 2 months in a training camp for their replacement team. Pfeffer wrote back fast. There was no room. 10 days later, Adkisson wrote again, saying he hoped Pfeffer would keep him in mind anyway. He kept working. Dallas, Fort Worth, Corpus Christi, San Antonio when there was opposition money on the table. Records show roughly 26 matches in his first 11 months as a professional. Not 26 a month. 26 total. He loved it. He was starving. And then, in June of 1953, Pfeffer finally threw him a rope. It would change American wrestling forever, and it happened almost by accident. Tony Santos was running promotions in New England against Paul Bowser, who had owned that part of the country for 3 decades. Santos worked closely with Pfeffer and agreed to take a chance on an unproven kid from Texas. There was one problem. Nobody in Hull, Massachusetts or Nashua, New Hampshire cared that Jack Adkisson had once blocked for Doak Walker. The SMU story meant nothing up there, so Santos threw the whole thing out and built a new man from scratch. He looked at this big, blonde, physically imposing 23-year-old and reached for the most reliable villain of the 20th century. Less than a decade after the war, in a country that still had fresh graves, Santos billed him as a German. The German giant from Munich. And he gave him a name, Fritz Von Erich. Nobody has ever fully explained where it came from. Years later, Von Erich told a reporter that Erich was his mother's maiden name. But there are no Von Erichs anywhere in his mother's family tree. It was almost certainly invented by Santos or by Pfeffer in a promoter's office in 5 minutes for money. The most famous surname in Texas wrestling history was a gimmick nobody bothered to write down the origin of. And it worked immediately. Writing to McLemore on Boston hotel stationery, Adkisson reported that he was winning constantly, that almost every match was a main event, and that as a villain, he had gone over exceptionally well with the crowds. He also mentioned, almost in passing, that once or twice he had needed to fight his way back to the dressing room. One night in Revere, Massachusetts, a crowd nearly trampled Santos as the promoter tried to keep them off his new heavy. Adkisson said he had never felt more helpless in his life. He had found it. The thing he was better at than throwing a discus. Being hated, but here is what almost nobody knows about this period. Even with the heat, even with the main events, he still could not make it work financially. Santos sent him to Montreal, where he headlined handicap matches 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and in his best month, he averaged about $142 a week. He wrote to Macklemore and laid it out plainly. He was not saving anything, and if a man could not save money in this business, there was no point in staying. He had to put money away, if only for the baby coming in February of 1954. And you never know when you are going to get hurt and lose the ability to earn at all. Read that again. Fritz Von Erich, the future architect of a wrestling empire, was ready to walk away because he could not save a few dollars. He asked Macklemore for permission to contact the rival Houston promoter about coming home to Texas. That letter is the hinge the entire Von Erich story swings on. If the answer had been no, there is a very good chance Jack Adkisson goes back to the fire department and nobody ever hears the name again. No world class, no sportatorium, no parade of champions, and no tragedy. The answer was yes. By November of 1953, he was working the Houston office alongside stars like Bull Curry and Duke Keomuka. And Keomuka is the man you should thank, or blame, for everything that followed. Keomuka used a body claw. Adkisson watched it, took it, moved it up to the skull, and by 1959, the iron claw was his. At home in Texas, he shelved the German act for a while, but he brought the New England attitude back with him. In a match against a young Ray Stevens, he threw his opponent out of the ring and got physical with a heckler, earning a 15-day suspension from the Athletic Commission. The papers noted that the once affable SMU student was getting surlier by the day. They had no idea. In the late spring of 1954, Adkisson went to Minneapolis for his second out-of-state tour, and this time he went as Fritz full-time. The claw was still years away. His weapon then was a flying knee drop off the top rope, usually into an opponent's back, which either won the match or got him disqualified. At the box office, the difference did not matter. He worked as Jack Adkisson for the last time in late 1954. From that point forward, for the rest of his life, in every way that counted, he was Fritz Von Erich. What made him different from the 100 other fake Germans working American rings was restraint. Texas announcer Bill Mercer, who worked with him for years, explained it simply. Fritz did not goose-step. He skipped the cartoon entirely. He was just the German type guy right after the war, played straight, and that is exactly why it traveled. The bookings got bigger. Calgary, Buffalo, Toronto, and St. Louis, the most prestigious wrestling city in America. In Edmonton, he met Stu Hart, who trained and booked him, and paired him with a kayfabe brother named Waldo Von Erich, played by a Canadian named Walter Sieber, no relation to anybody. By the end of the 1950s, Fritz Von Erich was a legitimate national attraction. And then on a Saturday evening in March of 1959, the story turns, and it never turns back. The residents of the Sunny Acres Trailer Court in Niagara, New York, were frantic. A 6-year-old boy was missing. Jackie had gone to play with a neighbor and had not been seen in 90 minutes. Shortly before 7:30 in the evening, on March 7, 1959, a member of the search party found the child face down in a water-filled ditch running between the rows of trailers. Jack Barton Adkisson Jr. had stepped on a trailer tongue and made contact with a live electrical line. The shock knocked him unconscious. He fell into the melting snow and drowned. The coroner ruled it a drowning while unconscious from electric shock. He was 6 years old. Fritz stopped traveling to the East Coast and let Waldo take the Von Erich name to the Northeast permanently. But he did not stop. He kept wrestling. He kept building. Whatever grief did to Jack Adkisson, It did not slow down Fritz von Erich, and there are people who believe that is the whole tragedy in one sentence. In 1963, he won both versions of the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. He became the biggest heel in St. Louis, working under Sam Muchnick, the most powerful promoter in the country and the president of the NWA. Muchnick liked him. Muchnick believed in him, and it still was not enough because of the name. Fritz von Erich should have been the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He had the size, the drawing power, the interviews, the political backing. What he did not have was a real name. Lou Thesz, the standard bearer of the era, was openly contemptuous of gimmick wrestlers, and the board did not want its world champion walking around with an obviously invented stage name. Fritz even offered to wrestle under Jack Adkisson to get the belt. When the idea came back around in the 1970s, the board voted it down again. He built a character so effective it disqualified him from the only prize he actually wanted. He wrestled in St. Louis until 1967, when he lost a title match to champion Gene Kiniski and voluntarily left the territory. But while America was arguing about his name, Japan was making him a god. In November of 1966, Fritz took his first major tour with the Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance. The country was still reeling. Rikidozan, the man who had personally built Japanese wrestling into a national obsession, had been stabbed in a Tokyo nightclub in 1963 and died days later, leaving the entire industry without its center. Japan needed monsters for its new heroes to slay. Fritz was the perfect monster. On December 3, 1966, he faced Giant Baba at the Nippon Budokan for the NWA International Heavyweight Championship, in the first professional wrestling event ever held in that building. Baba retained by disqualification because of course he did. That was the formula, and Fritz gave them the claw. The Japanese called it Tetsu no Tume, the Iron Claw. It became one of the most famous holds in the history of Japanese wrestling. He feuded with Baba, he feuded with Antonio Inoki, titles changed hands, buildings sold out. In a country where wrestling was treated with genuine reverence, Fritz von Erich was not a joke. He was a menace, with a name that sounded like a curse. He helped rebuild Japanese wrestling after Rikidozan. That is not a small line on a resume. That is a piece of another nation's cultural history. And back home, quietly, he was doing something far more consequential than winning belts. He was buying the business. He got his first taste of ownership in the Rochester, New York territory. Then, in 1966, he became a partner in Ed McLemore's Southwest Sports. And when McLemore died in 1969 at 63, Fritz took the promotion. He never forgot who let him in. He said Ed had gone with him to Houston for his first match and had been like a member of the family ever since. With Sam Muchnick backing him, Von Erich became the promoter of the Dallas territory, effectively overseeing Houston and San Antonio as well. He had the Sportatorium, he had TV, he had the whole state, and in 1975, he became president of the National Wrestling Alliance. The man they refused to make champion because of his fake name now ran the organization that had refused him. He held the office through 1976, while continuing to wrestle in his own promotion, which several board members considered a flat conflict of interest. They were not wrong. But Fritz had stopped asking permission a long time ago. So he had everything. The territory, the TV, the office. There was only one thing left to build: a dynasty. Fritz and Doris had 6 sons: Jack Jr., gone in 1959, Kevin, born in 1957, David, 1958, Kerry, 1960, Mike, 1964, Chris, 1969. Every single one of the survivors grew up to be a professional wrestler. And what Fritz had was not just 5 boys, it was 5 boys who looked like they had been designed in a laboratory to sell tickets in Texas. Long hair, tans, blue jeans, bare feet, genuine athletes, local, real, not a gimmick in sight, which was the greatest gimmick of all, because their father had spent 30 years being a fake German, and now he could sell the world something authentic. By 1981, the promotion was running big shows under the name Wrestling Star Wars. In 1982, big-time wrestling was renamed World Class Championship Wrestling, and Fritz aimed it at the entire country. And World Class was, for a short window, the most beautiful thing in American wrestling. This was not a smoky bingo hall product. Fritz spent money, multiple cameras, slow-motion replay, entrance music years before it was standard. It was syndicated across the United States and around the world, all the way to Israel, where the Von Erichs drew like rock stars. Kids in places that had never heard of the Sportatorium knew who Kevin Von Erich was. On June 4, 1982, at Texas Stadium in Irving, Fritz held his own retirement show. After 29 years in the ring, he beat King Kong Bundy in a Falls Count Anywhere match to win the American Heavyweight Championship, pinning the big man in the end zone. Andre the Giant was on the card. Kerry beat Harley Race. It was a coronation and a handoff at the same time. Fritz was stepping back so his sons could step forward. And for about 18 months, it was perfect. Then came Christmas night, 1982, and the single hottest angle of the decade. Kerry Von Erich challenged Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in a steel cage. Fritz added a special guest referee to make sure everything was fair, and the fans voted in Michael Hayes of the Fabulous Freebirds, who at that point were allies of the family. Hayes knocked Flair out, told Kerry to cover him, and Kerry refused to win that way. Hayes blew up. Terry Gordy slammed the cage door on Kerry's head. And Texas lost its mind. The Von Erichs against the Freebirds broke box office records across the state. Good Sons of Texas against long-haired outsiders from Georgia. It ran for years, through Reunion Arena and the Cotton Bowl and Texas Stadium. It is still one of the greatest feuds the business has ever produced. Fritz Von Erich had done it. He had built the empire, and he had built it out of his own children, and that is exactly when the price came due. On February the 10th, 1984, David von Erich was found dead in a hotel room in Tokyo. He was 25 years old. He was, by consensus in the locker room, the best worker of the brothers, and he was weeks away from being made NWA World Heavyweight Champion. The United States Embassy death report listed acute enteritis, an inflammation of the small intestine. Almost nobody in wrestling believed it. Ric Flair wrote in his autobiography that everyone in the business believes David died of a drug overdose, and that Bruiser Brody, who found the body, flushed the pills before police arrived. Mick Foley wrote the same. Kevin has always maintained his brother died of natural causes. The truth was never established, and it never will be. What is certain is that a 25-year-old man went to sleep in a foreign hotel room and did not wake up, and his father had a promotion to run on Monday. What Fritz did next is the thing people cannot agree about to this day. On May 6, 1984, less than 3 months after David died, World Class filled Texas Stadium for the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions. Kerry challenged Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. He walked out to his dead brother's entrance music, a Tanya Tucker song about Texas, and he won. It is one of the most emotional moments in the history of American wrestling. A whole state grieving in one building, and the family getting the belt that David never got to hold. Kerry lost it back to Flair 3 weeks later. Read that again, because it tells you something. The most cathartic championship win in territorial history lasted 18 days. It was a moment, and moments were what Fritz sold, and moments do not sustain a company. And the family kept feeding the machine. Mike Von Erich never wanted any of it. He wanted to work behind a camera for World Class. He wanted to play music. After David died, the spot in the Freebirds feud was empty, and Fritz put Mike in it. Kevin later said plainly that Mike suffered under the pressure of having to be David, of having to succeed at the level his older brothers had reached. In 1985, on a tour of Israel, Mike hurt his shoulder. He had surgery. He was released in good condition. 4 days later, his temperature hit 107 degrees. The surgeons had missed an infection, and Mike had toxic shock syndrome. He nearly died. He lost a huge amount of weight and suffered brain damage. And while he lay there, World Class planned his return. There was a press conference at the hospital. Months later, he was back in the ring, visibly smaller, visibly diminished, without the coordination or the strength he had before. In 1986, he suffered head injuries when his car rolled. He kept wrestling anyway. Then on June 4, 1986, exactly 4 years to the day after Fritz's retirement show, Kerry tried to pass a truck on a 2-lane road and crashed his motorcycle into the back of a police car. It crushed his right foot and dislocated his hip. He tried to walk on it long before it healed, and the foot was amputated. He went back to wrestling with a prosthesis, and he hid it. Not just from the fans, from most of the other wrestlers. He won the WWE Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam in 1990 as the Texas Tornado, on one foot, and almost nobody in that locker room knew. He got addicted to painkillers. The arrests started, and the empire was collapsing in real time. In February of 1986, Fritz pulled World Class out of the NWA, betting he could go national on his own. The timing was catastrophic. Vince McMahon's WWE was hoovering up the territories, and the talent Fritz needed was walking out the door to New York, to Bill Watts, to Jim Crockett. Gino Hernandez was found dead in his apartment that same month. The stadium shows that had printed money now cost more than they made. At his most desperate, Fritz introduced a wrestler called Fritz Von Erich, billed as Waldo's son and presented on television as family. He was a Dallas wrestler named Ricky Vaughn, not related to anyone. The fans, who had loved this family precisely because they seemed real, figured it out and never quite forgave it. And then it got worse. On April 12, 1987, after an arrest for DUI and marijuana possession, Mike Von Erich took a fatal dose of tranquilizers and alcohol in Denton County. He was missing for days before he was found. He was 23. His last match had been at the Sportatorium 9 days earlier. The Parade of Champions that year was rebranded as a memorial for David and Mike. The promotion sold premium tickets for it. There was a mud wrestling match on the card. That is not a rumor. That is what happened. And on Christmas night, 1987, Fritz Von Erich collapsed on live television. Ring announcer Mark Lawrence broke in with updates. He named the hospital. The territory was dying. The family had buried 2 sons in 3 years, and the patriarch went down in front of the cameras. Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer tore it apart, calling it a fake heart attack angle designed to draw sympathy money onto the Freebirds. It became one of the most infamous stories in wrestling. Defenders have pointed out that the commentary never actually said the words heart attack, never referenced the dead sons, and that Fritz never worked another angle afterward. Maybe it was a work, maybe it was not. Here is the point that survives either verdict. Fritz Von Erich had spent 35 years building a world where nothing was ever admitted to be fake. And so when he fell down on Christmas Day, in the middle of the worst grief a man can carry, not one person in America could tell the difference. That is what kayfabe cost him. He had made himself unbelievable. By 1989, World Class was merged into Jerry Jarrett's Continental Wrestling Association to form the United States Wrestling Association. The empire was gone. Chris Von Erich was the youngest, born in 1969, 5'5", asthma, bones that broke almost on contact, a side effect of the medication he took to breathe. He loved wrestling more than any of them, and his body would not let him have it. On September 12, 1991, at 21 years old, After years of frustration and depression and the loss of Mike, Chris shot himself in the head. His mother and Kevin had tried to talk to him that same day. Fritz and Doris divorced on July 21, 1992, 42 years. And on February 18, 1993, Kerry Von Erich, with a warrant out and his marriage over, walked out on his father's ranch in Denton County and fired a .44 caliber bullet through his own heart. He was 33. Bret Hart wrote that Kerry had told him months earlier that he wanted to follow his brothers, that they were calling him and that he believed his death was inevitable. Fritz placed a marker in the shape of an angel on the spot where his son died. He walked out to that patch of his own land, built a monument, and then lived there. 5 sons: Jack Jr. in 1959, David in 1984, Mike in 1987, Chris in 1991, Kerry in 1993. Only Kevin was left. So how do you judge the man? The prosecution is led by Lou Thez, and he was merciless. Thez said Fritz was not easy or pleasant to work for, that in a world of egos he was king, and that he knew you were supposed to speak well of the dead but could not think of one positive thing to say about him. Then Thez said the part that has followed Fritz for 30 years. When he thought about how Fritz destroyed his children, he found it terribly sad. The defense comes from Gary Hart, who booked World Class for years and had every reason to know. Hart said Fritz never looked over his shoulder or second-guessed him, that as long as business was good, he stayed away, and that Fritz was not the one pushing the kids. Fritz was just happy that they wanted it, and Fritz defended himself to the end. 4 years before he died, he told a reporter that everybody wants recognition, that his sons saw him getting it, that they idolized him, that he trained and was on television and had a big name, so why would they not want the same thing? There is something almost unbearable in that answer. It is not a lie. It is a father who genuinely could not see the difference between a son wanting a life and a son being handed one. Jack Adkisson died of lung cancer that had spread to his brain on September 10, 1997, at his home in Lake Dallas, Texas. He was 68. He had outlived 5 of his 6 children. In 2009, Fritz and all 5 of his wrestling sons were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as a family. They were inducted by Michael Hayes, the Freebird who had been their greatest enemy, and the honor was accepted by Kevin, the only one left alive to accept it. In 2023, the film The Iron Claw put the whole story in front of a generation that had never seen a sportatorium. And Kevin, who has carried this longer than anyone, once said the truest thing anybody has said about any of it. Asked by a radio station how you get over that kind of loss, he answered that he hated to bring everyone down, but grief never actually gets any better. So here is the honest verdict, and it refuses to be simple. Jack Adkisson was a genuinely great athlete who was not quite great enough at the things he loved first. He was a broke fireman who talked his way into wrestling and nearly quit over $142 a week. Like and subscribe for more hard-hitting wrestling documentaries. Until next time.